Forever Wild. This is the television program dedicated to environmental education in the Horry County schools. Welcome to the windiest, rainiest show we've ever done. The reason why it's so windy and rainy is we have a tropical storm, Ophelia, getting ready to turn into a Category 1 right over my shoulder right back here. About 100 miles offshore. It's sitting right now, it's churning behind us. In the next few hours, it's going to be coming in and hitting us as hard as it can with all of its fury. Right now, we're on the beaches of Wadey's Island. This is a coastal research island owned by a nature conservancy. If you look out through here, you can see the fury of this ocean. It's just whipping up. These waves are about 10 times higher than they normally are. This is amazing. Look at the spray coming off the top of these waves right here. All the energy and power of this storm is just, it's amazing to feel being able to stand in front of these things. Of course, everybody out there in the audience, you wouldn't want to go do this at home, going out and actually looking at these storms, because they are very powerful events and they're very dangerous events. They come in with a large amount of water called a storm surge. And as you can see here behind us, we have a large storm surge that is starting to come up right now under our feet. We're just past high tide, yet we still have waves that are coming up way up onto the beach, and they're coming onto this little makeshift road that they've got between the sand dunes here. These barrier islands are extremely important to keep intact because it keeps the winds, these are primarily northeast winds being sucked into this giant hurricane right here, keeps these winds kind of broken off of the main shoreline behind us back there. And we're probably about 3/4 of a mile out into the water right now on this barrier island. Cherry Grove Beach, if you'll kind of zoom down that way, I don't know if you can see it above those sea oats, but Cherry Grove Beach is just to our south. It's just off to our south here. That is the point of Cherry Grove Beach. That is Tillman Point. And you're seeing Cherry Grove Beach's water tower off in the distance. Right there, maybe you can see in the faint haze, the prevailing winds are being shoved straight into the front of those large cranes that are erecting some high-rises down there right now. Whereas high-rises are having to take the major brunt of developed shorelines, this beach has got many different benefits that actually are going to come from this storm, as well as detriments that are coming from this storm. Initially, you're going to see a large storm surge come in. It's going to cause a major amount of beach erosion. We're going to do a television program that does the before and the after segment of this storm. So we're going to see what the effects are to this specific beach and this specific area from this one storm. Once again, this is a Category 1 hurricane. As of right now, it's just a very strong, powerful tropical storm with sustained winds about 70 miles per hour. They're expecting it to change to a Category 1 hurricane in the next 3 to 4 hours, with some intensification as it enters the Gulf Stream waters heading toward our coast. It's an amazing event, very powerful. It kind of lifts your spirits to know that we are so small on this planet, to have these very large and intensified events happening right before our very eyes. It's really a cool thing to experience. Whoa, and here comes the storm surge right under our feet. Wow, we just got our microphone wire. As you're looking down the beach, there's already debris being washed out of different areas. Look here, look at that storm surge washing it up. You're starting to see a lot of spartina grass. It's being pushed up the beaches. And this is our primary producer in our marsh ecosystems. It's being pushed back further into the dune zone to act as a nutrifying agent, act as a fertilizer, so to speak, to our sand dunes. That's happening. That's a positive impact of it already. We also have some more positive impacts. We have some habitat that's being displaced and pushed along the shore here. Here are some large logs and debris starting to come up on the shore as we speak. If you look way off into that gray and looming horizon, you can actually see one of the hurricane bands way off in the distance. That darker patch out there is one of the largest sections of the hurricane. Right here we're looking at are the tropical storm as we speak. Man, what a day. Definitely a day you would not want to swim, because we have what's called riptides. And we can show a little microscopic version of a riptide if anybody would like to see it. Tidal pools at low tide are created by riptides. What you're seeing here is you're seeing this massive surge of water start to push up here by these big waves we have. Some of them 8 to 10 feet already as we speak. They're pushing down the beach. Okay, so when it comes up, when the waves surge up and it pushes down the beach like that, that's called a rip. A rip is simply a longshore tide. That's a tide that goes right down the beach, down the side of the beach, and it rips back portions of the land. We're going to go from different sections of Wadey's Island right now. We're going to do a little bit of exploring and see what the wildlife is doing in lieu of this hurricane. and we're going to see some other impacts of these real heavy storm surge waves we have behind us. So stick with us. It's going to be an adventurous episode of Forever Wild. We're going to see what's in the teeth of this hurricane. Stay tuned. As you're seeing right here on the beach, these are deer tracks right here. As you can see, you've got the front two toes of your ungulate species. They've got, they're really fast runners. They run on their front tip of their toes, and that's what you call the hooves there. This deer was obviously scared. It went here and jumped, it twisted, and here you go. You can see where it's running off in this direction. The point of the toes going that way. And if you look off here behind us, we've got a little temporary shelter that was an old bathhouse. You see it right there? And right over behind that is the secondary dune line. Now, we've just come off the primary dune line, which is a real high dunes characterized by a lot of sea oats out here, right here on the front end of the Berry Island. As you go behind the primary dune line, the secondary dune line has got a lot of shrubs and shorter, different kind of plants that are in thickets. And probably right now, those deer are hunkering down and looking for a place for shelter. We're going to kind of turn the camera away from the oncoming rain so you can see here. We've got another creature. We've got another creature that's looking for shelter right now, and he's just come in here. He has not had any kind of activity in the past, little bit, because all you see is rain droplets around it. This is the hole of a ghost crab. If you can see this, and right there's another hole entrance way to the ghost crab. They dig these things out. They're digging in for the storm. They know it's going to be a powerful one. They're sitting down there in the bottom of that hole, and they're hunkering down, and they're waiting for it. But see, they can breathe water. That's a big advantage. If a large storm surge was to come in, let's say this was a Category 4 hurricane or 5, a large hurricane, this whole area would be inundated with several feet of water, as much as 20 to 25 feet of water, kind of like what Katrina did a few weeks ago down in New Orleans in the Mississippi Gulf Coast region. Well, these critters breathe water, but they're still under the ground, so they've got a good foothold. They'll be a good adapted way to dig in as a water-breathing creature in light of that hurricane coming. Well, humans, we can't breathe water, so we've got to get out of Dodge. And same way with the deer. They're a mammal species that can't breathe water, so they've got to find a way to find a stable habitat in a very, very volatile, changing situation such as this onshore tropical storm we have right here. Let's go check some more wildlife areas that they be hiding. We'll also look at some really unique habitats that are going to be changed due to this hurricane. Hey, right over here we've got a ghost crab. We have one of the most adapted species to the beach. Remember the hole we looked at a while ago? Well, there's a ghost crab hole right here, but looking through these sand sea oats, you can see him camouflaged right there. Now, he's hiding out down in those sea oats right now because of such high winds in the area. If you'll come right here, can you see him right there, Brian? You see him hunkered down right there? I'm going to go around the back side of him and see if I can flush him towards you right here. You're not supposed to walk in sea oats. We're going to be real careful. It's a protected species. I'm going to kind of flush him out toward you here. I'm going to walk through the sea oats. Do not do this at home, but I am going to get the audience to where you can see this. Look at him. Look at him. He's a big crab. He'll run real fast. Do you see his claws? Look at that. Big. And he goes down in this hole just like that, and he's hiding. Of course, he breathes water, but he does live on land. Isn't that cool? Ghost crabs. And they come out a lot of times at night. But undeveloped beaches, you see a lot of those. Awesome. You better hide from that hurricane, buddy. If you can see this in the camera, that's a seagull struggling hard upwind, up current, to be able to find a roosting site during all of this wind. And a lot of seagulls and shorebirds suffer catastrophic losses in some of these larger hurricanes if they come ashore. They do rebound, however, in the coming months, but for temporary purposes, it's kind of a detriment to their species in the area. They have to really work on recolonizing a new beach. That is amazing. Here are these bunch of pelicans we've got flying upstream. They're flying upwind as hard as they can go, and they're just barely making headway. Look at them. Now, the higher this wind gets, the closer this hurricane gets, the harder it's going to get for them to do that, so they're going to have to find a place to roost here in a minute. That's another shorebird species that suffers a lot of loss during a hurricane, and they have to deal a lot with them. So they're pretty adapted. They've probably been through one or two of those already. Seems how we had a couple last year. They're doing their best. They're taking advantage of these waves maybe to catch a quick fish meal, too. I imagine they're probably just If it was me, I'd just be flying. I wouldn't be diving in those big waves. Look at that. Beautiful. That's the brown pelican. Look at this. Okay, this is great, okay? Okay, let's get down here on the water and actually show it water level. Okay, as you can see over my shoulder here, you're having beach formation right now. This beach is actually being pushed ashore. The waves and the water are pulling this sand back out into the ocean, and it's flushing in it's like a big washing machine. It's washing it back and back and back. Look at this evidence of massive erosion. We're already starting to see the roots of the sea oats holding as best they can on the sand dunes. Look at here. Here comes another big wave. Whoa! It's okay, everybody. Whoa! Hold tight. Big wave coming. It about washed your cameraman over right there. Yeah. And this beach grass and these all kinds of different adaptive plants that live in this environment are holding these sand grains. That's why it's important that we need to keep our primary dunes intact and not develop them. Because these hurricanes, this is the #1 defense against beach erosion. It's not seawalls, it's not man-made structures like riprap or groins or jetties. It is these structures right here, these roots, that hold the soil in place, that hold the, I say soil, let's hold the beach sand in place. Look at this massive walls of water coming through here. Wow, punctuated erosion due to a hurricane. Super cool. Now look at all those root hairs that are being exposed. Man, that's neat. It's starting to wash out tons and tons of this matter. See this matter here? This will also be fertilizer. This eventually will go out into the ocean. Whoa! And it will go out in the water, and it will wash out to sea, and then it will come back up, maybe up one of these inlets, and it will feed the marshes. So that is really important. It's important to our life cycle. I'm gonna grab one thing when the water recedes right here. This is something interesting to me. We've got something right here that all people need to watch out for. This is a giant roll of looks like 200 or 300 pound fishing line. This can get wrapped around many creatures. It can live in the environment for years and years. It was probably lost just off the shore earlier this summer, and it's washed ashore. Okay, this can last for thousands of years. Do not throw it out of your boat. I'm gonna keep this in my pocket best I can throughout this show, and we're gonna deposit it somewhere because birds can get killed by it and lots of wildlife. So make sure you keep this under wraps. Whoa! Because during these events, you're gonna see a lot of old debris, especially plastics, wash up on our shore. Let's check out some more effects of the hurricane. Okay, I don't know how well you're getting this picture right here, but what we have behind us is an inlet formation happening. Inlets are nothing more than when a hurricane tidal surge comes in and it leaves a massive amount of water on land, and it all has to run back to the ocean somewhere. Well, guess what? It cuts areas into these dunes, and eventually these areas are widened out, and over time they'll create new inlets in these barrier island communities. Same way with a developed community. Even though it has a seawall up there and you think it's safe, you can have an inlet formation. Big wall of water comes in, goes over the man-made structures, and it comes right back out through the seawall, and it rips it all apart, creates an inlet. No matter what we do, still the forces of nature are generally stronger than the forces of man, what we're dealing with it. So this is the formation of an inlet. A small inlet where water can come in and across the barrier island dune system here, back into the salt marsh behind us over there. That's really cool. Punctuated erosion right there. Really neat stuff. Let's go check some more hurricane evidence out. As another heavy rain band comes over, we've just entered the secondary dune formation line here on the beach. This would be an older dune formation on this barrier island. And as you're looking, and we're going to turn away from the water here. It's blowing the camera lens. As you're looking behind us here, we're probably 25 feet above where we were just a second ago down in those primary dunes. The secondary dune system is the older colonized system, and you can tell it's older because it's got older vegetation. Look behind us. You see these trees right here? These trees are probably either, this is the type of pine that is used to living in marshes. It could be a pond pine species. We have a lot of different species of smilax. If you look over behind us there, we've got very tall pine trees off in the distance there. That's all an indication that you're in the secondary climax community, basically, of the salt marsh. This is the highest land on a barrier island. It's probably where you're more than likely going to see the majority of your species. This is also the area that gets wiped out by development. So when you see this, they're going to bring bulldozers in here, not on this end of the island, but on the north end, in a few months, they're planning on doing some development that could possibly bring in bulldozers and knock all this primary system down, which is a major blow to the ecological community on this island. There's also dwarf cherry growing out here. There's a lot of different types of species of plants. Of course, the more biodiversity in plants, you know, the more biodiversity in animals. So if you take these out, you take out a lot of animal habitat. So we do need to leave a lot of these things intact instead of developing every square inch of the top of these barrier islands like in the past we seem to have done as a society. Also, if you look at those trees in the distance, I don't know if you can see them, they're all leaning one direction. That's an evidence of a onshore breeze, typically an onshore breeze, that has trimmed those trees with the salt spray from the ocean. See how the trees kind of look kind of funny shaped and all leaning one way? That salt spray comes across the top, and it trims the top kind of like hedge trimmers do out there in your yard. It's kind of neat. All right, here's where your deer are going to be hiding right here, by the way. Your primary community, the high ground, and the thickest amount of vegetation that affords the most security during a rainstorm or during a tropical storm or a hurricane. That I know is where I would be if I had no way to get off of this island, which fortunately we have our vehicle to get off this island now. But if we didn't have one, we would probably hunker down in something like that. If the nasty part of this storm came in, that's where we would go and try to find a little cubby hole, so to speak, out of the weather. Okay, let's go see some more communities out here at a hurricane. As you see behind us right here, we're standing at the base of the secondary dune system. Look at this great wall of dunes we have up here. This is our 25-foot steep hill we were talking about. That's what we were just on top of just a second ago. As you can see here, this is like a little barrier. Well, that's why they're called barrier islands. Back in the old days, they used to use these things as fortresses back in historical times because they were such a natural wall of fortification. Nowadays, it's used for fortification from hurricane damage, and we need to leave these barrier islands intact instead of developing every one of these. And thank goodness this south end of Wadey's Island has been conserved by the Nature Conservancy, and hopefully it will be conserved in the future. It's very important that we maintain the continuity of these systems to protect not only private property, but ecological property as well. Lots of wildlife habitats in the future. Let's go check out some more areas. This is neat. Oh, we got some big debris floating off too. We've got some dock debris out of one of the inlets starting to blow out right there. We got a heavy rain band hitting. Yeah, here comes a wind band. Feel it? Starting to pick up good now. Okay, Brian, let's go ahead and get off this island. I'll feel a lot more comfortable with it. Okay? As one of these big waves comes in and pounds the beach here in just a second, well, it's still eroding these beaches. We're going to do the smart thing, and we're going to get out of here. And we're going to come back and see what has happened after the storm. We're kind of seeing the effects just at the beginning of it, but we're going to come back in a couple of days, and we're going to see what this storm has done. But until then, we're going to kind of let you guys take a look behind us at all this erosion happening and these big walls of water out there and these big waves, and just kind of enjoy just a couple of minutes of nature's power, its fury, and its beauty. Tropical storm Ophelia. Okay, let's get out of here. I feel more comfortable getting out of here. We're here 3 weeks after the tropical storm Ophelia on Wadey's Island again to see what the effects of that storm have had on the beach erosion and some of the coastal environments of this barrier island right here. As a matter of fact, we may even go over to Cherry Grove a little bit later on and see what the effects are over there. It's a little beach that has a lot of development on it just to our south. As you can see here, it would be a real pretty day, but guess what? Just off the coast of Florida, we have got another tropical storm kicking up the surf in the Atlantic. It's between Miami Beach and Daytona Beach, Florida right now. It's way, way, way down, hundreds of miles to our south. Yet, if you look up in the sky, you can see the edge of these band clouds starting to suck hurricane force winds back into the center of the storm. Tropical storm force winds. You see the band clouds here, they're going from the northeast to the southwest. That seems to be how it's traveling, straight down the coast. Actually, that's going just about due west right there, heading straight toward that tropical storm. It's good that you can see the cloud formations on this storm because the last one was so cloudy out here and windy. It was very difficult to speak about the cloud formations. There's several types of cloud formations you can see in this kind of storm environment. The low clouds blowing from right to left that are kind of billowy is a stratocumulus cloud. Okay, it blows very fast across the surface underneath the hurricane. As you go up above that, in the background we've even got cirrus clouds, which are very high clouds formed out of ice crystals, and it's in the blue skies. We've got some really neat cloud formations out here, and anytime you get around the outer edges, way out away from a storm, you get to see beautiful, beautiful examples of clouds. And I know a lot of people out there, especially teachers, need to look at cloud formations for a lot of their students. And that's a good way to teach them, is right around a period of low pressure activity like a tropical storm front. Don't get out in the dangerous sections of it, of course, with kids, but right on the edges of it, when it's still kind of a pretty day like this, you can see some beautiful, it looks almost like white billowy mountains in the sky, some of these big pretty clouds we got blowing over. Very dynamic system in the sky today. If you look behind us, it's not nearly as churned up as it was the other day when we came out here when Tropical Storm Ophelia was on us. It's kind of a smooth day out there. Way out to sea, you don't see a lot of white caps way out there like we saw with Ophelia. The white caps are typically coming in on our first set of sandbar, which is out there. Our sandbar, the furthest one out, that's the first sandbar, and then we have the main beach right here. See those waves? They are about a foot higher than they normally would be on an average day out here, though, due to this other tropical storm. Probably 500, 600 miles away from us, even more than that in some cases. This is amazing that these storms have this much power, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away from them. They can still kick up surf. Very, very amazing and impressive activity to me, definitely. As you're looking up and down the beach, we had some punctuated erosion from Tropical Storm Ophelia, and we're going to be walking along and we're going to be checking out little indicators and showing you where that erosion took place and how it affected our beach. Last time we came to this beach, we could not stand out here. If you walked out here, you would have been underwater. That's how high that surf was. You've been underwater to about right here at knee deep on me. As you see today, we've got a lot more beach line out behind us, and the tide's coming in. It's just about at peak high right now, so we've got quite a bit more beach. We're going to be seeing what these different root systems do, and see some of these hillocks and these swales and these different dune systems, and see how they hold some of this beach sand. Let's check it out next. Hey, look at here, guys. We have found one of the most camouflaged critters on the beach, and if he moves, you'll probably be able to see him. Can you pick out the animal in this picture? This is a baby or juvenile ghost crab right here before breeding age, and you can tell it because he's all speckly sand color. Look at there. This ghost crab's probably out getting him a little meal on the sand here, looking for something to eat. And I'm going to put my finger right near him, see if he runs. Whoa, really quick. He came to right here. He's right there. They have little bursts of energy. Whoa, look at that. And their eyeballs are up on stalks looking around all the time. Look at that. Boink, boink, boink. Back and forth. There's the ghost crab. Called the ghost crab because they match the sand. Once again, we saw that in the hurricane, and here again with this tropical storm coming offshore. We've got some more activity during the daytime. There's a lot of activity in the primary dune line here. Let's look around here on this primary dune line too. While we're standing here, let's look back here for a second. We're going to take a look. During Tropical Storm Ophelia, there was a lot of punctuated erosion happening. And here again, with this tropical storm out off the coast, way off the coast of Florida, we're still starting to see this very much same cycle happen again. We're seeing this higher tide than usual. We're starting to see the tide come up and lapping away at the dune line. So let's check out and see what our roots have done, where you can see a little better this week. If you look right here behind me, this is called the sea oat, okay? This is one of the most dominant species, pioneer species on the primary dune lines. This is one of the few species on Earth that has the ability to really anchor these dunes in place. And how it does it is that, you see how close these stems are right here along the beach? As sand grains blow, they blow around those stems, and it causes friction and a little turbulence in that air current. And those sand grains accumulate on top of these stems. Now, as you look down here below, these things send out long shoots either direction, and they'll pop up a new plant on it. Long, thick roots. And if you can see here, here's one of those roots right there. It's gone out long, and it's popped out on the sides right there. I'm not going to pull this plant because it is protected by law in South Carolina. It's a very important plant to keep in your dune habitat. And if you look here, look at there. There's that long stem going sideways under the ground. It's popping up a new shoot right here off of it. And all these interconnected branches and stems and roots right here all come together to form this web that holds those sand grains in place. Without the natural process of beach accretion, which means beach building over time, you could never have, without this right here, you would never have that process taking place. Now, due to this process being left intact on this barrier island for thousands and thousands of years, this sand dune can actually nourish the beach naturally, give sand back to the beach. And then over time, the wind will come back over time and blow all that sand grains back up here, and these grasses will catch them. Will catch those sand grains, and it'll be building them back. So these beaches are constantly fluxing in and out, in and out, in and out over time. Really cool. But if you're walking around on these, what we call hillocks, as you look around here on these sand dunes, this is called a hillock. This is a high point of the dune. And this right here is called a swale. A swale is where the water has come through and had some erosion during rain events and whatnot, and you don't have as many plants inside those areas in the swales. If you're walking in a dune line, first of all, it's best not to walk in them at all. It's best not walk in them. If you do happen to venture off into one of these dunes, they are protected sites. Don't do that. We've been showing that on this video, and that's kind of not really good for us to be in this dune line on top of these dunes showing these things. Due to that last hurricane, the only real dry ground we had was on some of these dune lines, so we had to be up above the water line to be doing some filming. That's why we were there. Today we're staying down in the low ground. We're not going to in the swale area. We're not going to walk up into these dune protected areas that have all these seagrasses. Just remember, your foot traffic can kill these things. As you step down, you can compress this soil, this sand. It doesn't look like much compression due to your footstep, but over time those sand grains get packed so tightly together that these roots have a harder time growing through them. It can actually kill out some of these plants. So please don't walk down through the dune lines and step on any of your protected primary dune line plant, dominant plant species. Anything growing in these dunes, just consider it a protected species. You'd be better off. Now, to a lot of people walking on the beach, you really don't want to walk up on this little plant right here. This is called the sea spur or the sand spur to a lot of people. It's one of the species that is a colonizer of the dune systems, and it does help our system stay intact. So it's not necessarily a bad species, but to humans, the way they disperse their seed is kind of bad, because what will happen is that little seed right there with all these very, very sharp needle-like spines on it will fall on the ground. An animal will come by, like us, we're a mammal, and we will step on it, and we'll go, ooh, ah, 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 ah. We'll jump around with our bare feet and get that in our foot. And then next thing you know, we've moved that seed about 10 feet away, or 2-3 feet away, and we'll throw it on the ground. Well, as soon as that thing hits the ground, there's a new place that it can germinate. So we have actually transported seeds from place to place. It's called seed dispersal. It's a very active way of dispersing seeds, but be careful if you're ever walking around these primary dunes. Watch these guys right here, because these sand spurs are everywhere. I expect you to wear shoes out here. At least wear a good set of flip-flops, if nothing else, out here in these dune lines. And if you've ever had one of these in your foot, you'll know the meaning of the word ouch, because it will get in between your toes, and man, does it hurt. Right. Hey, everybody, look at this. We found one of the most rare finds right now along our coast. Due to all the people picking up our shells and everything, you don't have as much as it used to be down here. But look at here, we found the sand dollar. Here's the back side of the sand dollar. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grooves in it. Look at here. You flip him over. This actually is a relative of the sea urchin because it's covered with hairs when it's alive. This is the shell of him, or the exoskeleton of this creature right here. Isn't that cool? That is awesome. It's got the sea stars right here. There are several different legends that go along with this. Some of them are religious legends. Some of them are different kind of stories that go along with the sand dollar. But basically what he is he's a little filter feeder. He'll sit on the bottom, he'll go around, he'll kind of look, eats macroinvertebrates and things of that nature. He'll filter them through, and he crawls along the bottom on hairs like that right there. See there? Isn't that an amazing creature? It's really cool. That's neat. And I believe the family is called the echinoderms. I'm going to look him up. I've got a nature guide to the Carolina coast back here, and we're going to look this guy up and double check for you the information on him. But the sand dollar is one of our most beautiful seashells, no doubt about it, that you can find on the Carolina coast. And that is amazing. Out of all these broken shells, we found a whole sand dollar, as fragile as these are. They're beautiful. We used to find them out here on Wadey's Island by the bucketful. We really did when I was a boy. We found them 5-gallon bucketfuls at a time. And after storms is a good time to go shell hunting. Very, very pretty shell right there, the sand dollar. take a look at this, everybody. Talk about depositional layering of sand. I mean, sand deposited over time. You can see that right here. Starting at the top layer here where our primary dune colonizing plants are, if you'll look right down here, start to see these gray lines. See them, see them, see them, see them. You can see them a lot better down here. That shows your different layering times of the sand. Over time, you've had different events come in and lay down a layer of sand. Another event came in and laid it down here. That could be as short a period of time as just one tidal cycle. It could be several months. It could be a couple of years to get this much right here. So every time you have a big event come through, it leaves a little record of what it does. Take a look at that. There's your events right there, all the way up through the top of that sand dune. It could be a major winter storm, summer storm. Could be anything causing these things. Could be a major tide event. But there again, there you can see layering of sand. And that's another good way to show kids about compositions of geological structures. Right out here on the beach, you've got sand layers showing different events. It's really cool. Of course, your different colors mean things too, but to tell you the truth, I'm not really a big-time geologist. I'm still learning. I'm kind of a novice there. So to me, it's fascinating to know. I would like to know what that dark line is made of. I'd like to know what this gray line is made of. And if you don't know stuff like that, anybody can learn this stuff. You just got to go on the internet, or you got to get a good book and educate yourself about coastal layering effect. That's basically how you would write that in. Maybe there's a keyword search on the internet, layering effect of sand dunes. It's really neat. We're in a very powerful age technologically, and we can do a lot of searches for ourselves and educate ourselves a lot about nature. So that's something I'm going to try and do after we get off the air with the show. Is I'm going to learn how what different compositions this sand is made out of. It's kind of a neat thing, and you can do the same. Here's something you don't normally see on our beaches a lot until after a big storm has kicked them up, is a big bunch of oysters. You may see one or two along the beach just randomly, but you won't see a whole bunch of them that are hooked together like that usually. That's had some real force put to it to break it off of the oyster reef, and this is an older set of oysters because you can tell due to the erosion in it. It's got the little holes there that have been eaten through the shell. That's neat. Of course, these things are made out of calcium carbonate. It's the same structure that our bones are made out of. The electrical energy of that nerve impulses inside that creature creates that outer crust in its shell like that, just like just about every sea creature does. And they get the calcium carbonate from the seawater. It's dissolved in the seawater. It sticks to the electrical activity inside the muscle of the meat, and it creates this shell. It's kind of a neat thing. Check this out here. We've got another. This is called the cockle shell. It's kind of broken up due to some, there again, high energy impacted, probably rolled on the bottom of waves, and it got broken up. That's one of the larger shells you see along the beach. It's got annual growth rings along the side here. You can see the little layering effect of the growth rings. You cut this shell down the middle here and you count the growth rings. You can see how many times it's gone through a season, a winter season and a summer season. Winter season, they don't grow as much as the summer, so it lays a thin ring for the winter and a thick band of growth for the winter. You can see that kind of layering effect on the side of that shell there. Here we go. Here is another shell. This is called the arc shell. It looks very similar to our cockle. It's a little bit smaller though. That's another one of the species that gets thrown up on the beaches a lot. And if you look in my hand here, there's another kind of arc shell. It's got kind of an overbite, if you so to speak. It's got a little bit of a lip, downturned lip right there, and it's still got the attachment ligament right here in the back of this shell. And there's an oyster drill that's drilled a hole right there in the end of it. If you ever wanted to make a neat necklace, you'd get one of these and you'd take a string and put it through that, or your favorite chain, and you can make you a nice necklace. Makes a really cool necklace, and Native Americans would do that in a lot of cases with these. It made nice ornamental jewelry and whatnot out of them. Kind of cool. You can also make a set of tweezers if you had to. Pull out things. Huh. Here we go. So next time you're out on the beach, check these beaches out right after a coastal storm. It's a great time to go shell hunting. You see all this debris kind of peeing down the beach right there? You see all the debris that's right along the dune line? That debris does two things. First of all, that debris is mostly Spartina grass from our salt marshes, which is this keystone species we did it last month on our last episode. What it does is it pushes out of these inlets when these big storms come through and we have a lot of high water. And these mats of vegetation all come out here on the beach. It's just like having leaves falling on your yard. It's there for a fertilizing purpose. This gives a lot of nutrients back to our coastline, our beaches. Different kind of sea creatures will come up, little scavengers, and they'll eat this and they'll decompose it back into the soil. But in these sand grains, a lot of people think sand grains are really clean. They don't have a lot of bacteria in them. Guess what? here in the palm of my hand, I probably got just as many creatures in my hand as there are creatures on Earth. There's probably billions and billions and billions of creatures right here in my hand as there are macroscopic creatures on land. This is microscopic, of course. So there's many, many bazillions of bacteria down inside these little pores in between this sand. So the beach is actually a living thing, mostly made out of quartz. This is a quartz crystal ultimately eroded from our Appalachian Mountains, passed down through the rivers, and it comes out to rest on our seashores. So that's where our beach sand comes from. It's really fascinating. Here's sargassum weed. Sargassum weed is known, it's got little bladders. It's one of the chrysophytes, what they call brown algae. If you look right here, it's got bladder. Those bladders help it float in the water, and it is a kind of a plant species, an alga species from offshore. Most notably, there's bunches of this stuff along the border of the Gulf Stream and the onshore Atlantic drift currents. It's really, really a beautiful kind of a plant. And those swim bladders right there, you can bring it into your classroom and break them apart and let the kids open them up and see how this plant floats along and how it has adapted to survive on top of the sea. That's the surface of the sea zone. It's really a cool little creature. A lot of animals live around that too, like a little floating island in the water. Okay, we'll check out some more things on this beach and along the beach due to these storms. It's really an interesting day to come explore the beach. Now we have walked up through the swales, through the low points in the dunes where there's not many plant species, so we didn't tromp on any protected species to get here. Now I'm kind of standing in a little open area where there's not many plants, so therefore we're watching out for our coastal communities when we came up here. But if you'll look over my shoulder here, that is your secondary dune line. That's where you hit the 20-foot elevation back here. Now the secondary dune line doesn't have to be 20 feet, but you can tell it's a secondary dune line because of the change in vegetation. You see how the vegetation has gone from what they call colonizing species, such as sea oats, and you got sea oxide daisy and some other things here. Now look back behind us. Right back in here, you've got pine colonizing the top of these dunes. So therefore, you know you've had a major shift in vegetation, and usually a major shift in vegetation means a major habitat shift, okay? And those 20-foot dune lines right there, that's your secondary dunes. You know by the age of these trees that these dunes have not been covered by salt water in several years. If you were to do a cross-section of some of these trees or test to see how old they are, they probably indicate 20, 25 years in this stand in here. That's apparently what it looks like. They're very short due to the salt spray, but they're very wide-bodied trunks on those trees. So there again, secondary dune line, it feeds the primary dunes, the sand, over time by wind coming off the beaches, and it's feeding it back. It goes back and forth. It's a back-and-forth dynamic system. But that is where we usually see development. As a matter of fact, where we're standing right here is not going to be developed because this is the south end of the island. It's protected by the Coastal Resources Commission. We have got a lot of people that are protecting this out here. Nature Conservancy is working with Coastal Carolina University to protect this area, and thank goodness they are. The north end of this island is going to be developed in the next few years. And what they're going to do, chances are, is they're going to take this secondary dune line out. And that's a shame because there's a lot of very special species, such as pond pine and other types of plants and animals that live in that community. I, for one, am more toward the conservation side of things and preserving habitats a little bit more intact than I am developing on every square inch of land. That's my take on this island. I think we ought to leave it intact. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to that. Conservation people are probably not as into the money scheme as a lot of people are down here with development. Developers want to come in, they see a profit. That's their side, and they are entitled to that. It's the United States. We're entitled to both sides of the opinion. But we've got to do something with our rise in sea levels in the last 100 years, which has been 10 inches. If we don't protect some of these big dune systems, these things are 20 feet in the air. If we don't protect them, these barrier islands, and keep them intact, what's going to happen over time is we may run into a situation where we have advanced erosion because we've capped off this sand reservoir with concrete and other building materials where it cannot flow back and forth to the ocean anymore. We've kind of stopped that flow. So by doing that, we actually increase our erosion over time. And studies show around the world that sea levels have been rising about 1 inch every decade. That's 1 inch every 10 years. That's a very serious thing. Scientists are estimating in the low range that it will stay on that course in the next 100 years. On the high range of estimates, they're expecting it to erode 3 inches every decade. And in the middle range of estimates, which is probably where the majority of most scientists see it, they expect sea level rise in the next 100 years will be an extra 2 feet above normal sea level rise, which is a foot. Excuse me, extra foot over the foot, which is 1 foot over a foot, which is 24 inches. So in the next 100 years, the sea level rises 24 inches, like the middle ground of most scientists agree on. You have both sides of the argument there. If that was to rise 2 feet, these sand dunes would be the only thing left standing because they're the only thing above that 2-foot line. If we develop up to that line, these sand dunes are gone, you don't have the sand reservoir, guess what happens? We have to build big seawalls again. We have to put up large jetty structures, as we've seen all up and down the coast of the Carolinas here. There's a large jetty right on the northern tip of this island. And what that does is it keeps the longshore current sands from flowing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more down here at the inlet when you can see the effects of some of the erosion in different places. A built-up area, which is called Cherry Grove Beach down here just to our south, and an area that is not highly developed, not highly built up with human property. This is Wadey's Island. It's an excellent kind of little case study, little snapshot in time of what happens over time with erosion. And it's a big deal. These coastal storms just magnify these punctuated erosion events. So let's check that out. What do you think? Just to show the dynamic nature of barrier islands, we're on the southern tip of Wadey's Island here. And right after Hurricane Hugo came through, this was absolutely underwater. Look at this whole area here. And since then, it's been, probably 15 to 20 years ago, this has been building back up slowly over time. If you look behind us, we've got colonization by plants naturally occurring, and we have an accretion, which means a building up of the sand again. Now, when I was a boy, halfway to the end of this little point here we're standing on was about where the end of the island was. And the inlet itself actually came this direction, was up on this side near the island. Now the inlet has pushed its way over toward the hardened beach defense structures, which is a bunch of rip rock on the point out there where all the birds are diving out in the distance. You can see them out there feeding. And with that sand automatically shifted toward that direction because, once again, you're hardening your beach. Your beach doesn't have a way to flow that sand back and forth like in the beach community we spoke about earlier at the secondary dune line. And guess what? No sand on the beach equals no sand to block out where the channel comes, and the channel goes right up the side of those condos over there. It's an excellent example, punctuated erosion example of why it's not good to develop all your barrier islands and coastal properties all the way up to your primary dune line and to leave them intact, because it leaves that sand so it can cycle from year to year up and down different places. This inlet originally was probably created, I wasn't even alive then when this was created, by a large hurricane. And these inlets move very much dramatically during these big storm events. An inlet ought to be called an outlet because really hurricane water pushes in a giant storm surge. Wherever it runs back into the sea, creates these inlets or outlets of water back to the ocean, and that's where these creeks and these inlets come from originally. So it's a very dynamic system. Matter of fact, just to show a little, show the population out there what we have, show the audience what we have as a dynamic system. Look behind you over here, Brian. Check this out. Look right here. That spot right there was all living coastal pine, upland pine community behind the secondary dune line. But now look at it. Since all of this changing of this southern end of this island has come through in the past 15 years, it has gone back. The saltwater has intruded on this pine community, and it's killed off several pine trees. But those pine trees are also good habitats, even though they're dead, for different species such as woodpecker that can be colonizing those islands. We can have a lot of nesting birds that live in or around dead wood. We have a lot of different kind of species that use dead wood for habitat. Even raccoons have been known to colonize these kind of areas real heavily. Tons and tons and tons of species out here. There's supposed to be an American bald eagle, and I've seen him many times on this point. There's supposed to be an American bald eagle on this island somewhere nesting. I don't know where. He's either here or back one section on the mainland back there. But the old timers tell me he used to nest out here right on this island. So these things, these little barrier islands, you see them pop up with little pine picosans, they call them, little highlands in there. Pine hammocks, they say, or not pine picosans, pine hammocks, they call them, are very important to your coastal environment, and they need to stay intact. We don't need to develop every square inch of them. Wow, 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 wow. Look off behind you. Look back here. There is a bunch. Look at those birds flying up the coast. See them? There's your brown pelican right there. And they're doing what's called gliding, right over the top of the waves. Sometimes they get within 6, 7 inches of the waves, just drifting along, riding those air currents, drifting down the beach. Really cool. Of course, they're flying at the beach to a new spot, but when they want to hunt, they hunt more single than they do in big groups. That's neat. We were just walking down some of the widest beaches in the Grand Strand because we were on an intact barrier island, and we're still standing on the point of that barrier island now, the southern point of Wadey's Island. That's where we are. If you look over my shoulder, this is Cherry Grove, the northern point of Cherry Grove. Now, back before the Clean Water Act, where it made illegal dredging and filling of our waterways, dredging out the material and pumping it up on land to be able to develop new property, back before that act was enacted, to keep that from happening, some of this land behind us was built up. If you look behind us, this land behind these rocks where these condos are sitting, that didn't used to be the actual point. That was the old dune, primary dune line. They came in, a company came in, pumped in a bunch of sand on top of it, buttressed that area, made that point area out of rock, what's called hardened defenses. Seawalls are hardened defenses, bulkheads are hardened defenses, groins are hardened defenses, and rocks are hardened defenses against erosion. And what you've got there is you've got a punctuated erosion event. The reason why is because in this system, which is a completely different system, if you look here, this is flat, wide sand. This is peak high tide we're standing at. Look how wide the sand is. Take a good look. You've got a natural dune system that has just been recolonized. Unfortunately, somebody's thrown their trash out there, and we'll address that later. But it's a beautiful beach. The beach area here is absolutely wide and beautiful. Plenty of beach to walk up and down, no problem at all. But what do you see over here? Take a good look across my shoulder. Absolutely no beach all the way up to the rocks. None whatsoever. Okay? Let's go back several years. Let's go back 30 years when they started to do this project where they were pumping all this sand up in here. If they would have left this beach is intact like they are here, hindsight's always 20/20. I'm guilty of that too, like everybody is. They would have left them intact and not put in these hardened defenses that would keep the natural cycle of sand from going out and coming back in, but just kept the sand kind of under the rock, so to speak, keeps it from flowing by the wind and the currents back and forth like it does on these beaches naturally. What you would have out there, if they'd have left those dunes intact and those condos were never there, you would have in all actuality, now I'm not saying you would have totally, I don't even know what would happen. This is theoretical, and this is a hypothetical scenario. I don't know really what would happen. Chances are you have a good buffer. I know you would have more buffer during hurricane season for that channel, instead of shifting that way, due to the eddy pocket that's formed by our long beach here. This is an eddy pocket that's building this beach from this island to the south here. It's actually taking beach away from the northern end of Cherry Grove. It's taking their property. Is that right? Is that wrong? It's nature. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. We have to deal with the consequences. So what we need foresight and planning from now on in South Carolina that gives us many more feet of offset between our development, our primary dune line, and even our secondary dune line. We should not build on our buffer zone areas like these dynamic communities here we're standing on, like these coastal barrier islands. We should not build on them. We should leave them intact because that keeps the mainland areas open for development that is protected from storms. That is what we should do. From an ecological perspective, that is a much healthier situation. I believe we need to err on the side of caution on this one. And we need to take into effect what history has taught us. Is that if we build up land, and we put hardened defenses against erosion like we're seeing right behind us, time and time again, it's going to take millions and millions of dollars, of the taxpayers' dollars, to come back and create these beaches that underlie our entire coastal economy. In fact, I'm not a greed monger, but I am being economically sensible when I say this. If we would have protected these 30 to 40 years ago when we started doing these programs, we'd have protected our primary dune lines, we would have saved a lot more money in the long run. Therefore, we would have made more money on a prettier beach. So yes, that is economically sound policy. I think it's up to us to learn by our mistakes and do something for future planning that takes into effect 7 generations ahead, not only one. Remember, it's not our generation that's the most important. It's your children's children's children that we need to think about. Let's save their environment. What do you say? Here we've got a good example of somebody who disrespects their environment. Take a good look at this. We're on the point of Cherry Grove. Somebody probably came across here on a boat. They could have illegally come out on this island because they're not here for research purposes, and they may have dumped this thing out off the side of their boat. Now good, they put it in a trash bag, but bad. They did not take the litter back with them. You've got to take this back and you've got to recycle it. We've got cans in here, bottles, plastic things. I'm going to take a bag of this back with us when we're walking up the beach so we can help clean up this area. How about everybody out there be a positive conservationist, hands-on conservationist? Take you a handful of trash up on the beach. Learn about your coastal environments. Be a positive influence on your environment instead of a negative one. The lazy person is usually the person that gets fed on all the time by not only the economy, but everything else. So don't be lazy. Pick up, do something about your situations. Help the environment. Really, really help that out. In South Carolina, I wanted us to keep our beaches beautiful. We've got a Keep Our Beaches Beautiful campaign happening right here in North Myrtle Beach. They're a great organization. They work really hard toward that. I think we all can keep our beaches beautiful if we all take a hands-on approach to conservation. Please don't litter, and if you do, pick it up, take it out with you, and recycle that litter. We've talked a little bit about erosion, how it affects beaches, how it affects barrier islands. If you leave them intact, how that beach is actually re-nourished by the primary dune line over time. But what we haven't shown you is the second side of erosion. The first side of erosion, the erosion theory states that hardened development, like we just said, causes erosion because it can starve the beach by building on top of the primary dune line. The second reason for major beach erosion in South Carolina, and this is just as important as the first, if not more important, is the channelization of major inlets for navigation ports. Now what I've got here is a little diagram, a little simple diagram in the sand. These being the primary sand dune lines going up our island here. This is our island. Just above us on the north tip of this island is a large jetty. That jetty I've kind of made here out of a log. Pretend like that's the jetty. That's made out of rock, and it goes out to sea. The sea being this way. Of course, the sea's that way to us right now. This direction is north. That is north. Okay, so north facing that way. All right. The net flow of sand in South Carolina and along the eastern seaboard typically goes more from south to north. In other words, it goes in a northerly direction. More sand comes from this direction than is pulled back this way from north to south. So over time, what happens, a jetty, basically, they channelize an area, making like a really deep channel. Okay, I'm gonna dig that out. Let's say I've channelized that. I've got a really deep trench channel down the middle of this. Okay, I brought my dredge in here, I've channelized the end of the channel and made it navigable all the way up through here. This is a straight channel. It does not bend back and forth like a natural channel, so all of that energy is straight pipe. Kind of like a jet engine, forcing all of that through a small pipe, forcing all of this flow, all these creeks, instead of going back and forth and slowing the flow, it pushes it really fast. All the flow goes very fast out of the inlet, okay? Out, or well, what we call outlets now, inlets right here. Okay, this being the Intercoastal Waterway inlet, been channelized. Well, that net flow of sand coming from south to north, it doesn't know that this jetty's here. It's not supposed to be here, geologically speaking, so what it does is the water here and the sand that's caught up in the water flow flows around in a circle, and it comes around the end here. Now, when the water's going out really fast through this channel, because, like I said, there's no back and forth flow here, it takes that sand, and it actually, I'm going to get some sand back here and show what it does. It actually takes that sand, and this sand flows out in a circle, and it comes out, and it pushes it way out here in a big delta, okay? So what you end up with is a big delta of sand way out. It may push it out 2 or 3 miles out in the ocean. So way out there, a lot of our beach sand that's been on Cherry Grove Beach, and these southern beaches like Myrtle Beach, has eventually, over time, come north, been pushed out in the middle of this inlet area right here. And all the channels from here south or here north do the same thing, that have been channelized, and have got these hardened defenses, which we call jetties, jutting out in the water. Well, guess what? Pushed all the sand out here. Now what are we going to do? The sand is starving the beach on the north end. So what has happened is the beach may have been right at here, right at this level, at one time, this being the beach, this being the dune line right here. Okay, that's the watermark I've got marked with a little blade line right there. Well, let's say over a period of 10 years, all that sand's been pushed out here. You've got a big delta of sand. Now that sand can't feed this beach because it can't get back up here. It doesn't go backwards. It only flows out to sea. So what happens is you end up with an erosion problem. The northern sides erode. See there? Now our new line of sand comes back in. Our sand keeps eroding back. There's our old sand line. The new sand line comes back up to here. We don't have this old line anymore. And then so on. Now we're eroding back up in the dune line. Well, as you can see, all along the beaches, it's cutting back into the dune line. That's exactly what's happening, okay? Two prongs to erosion in South Carolina. Number one, coastal development, hardening of structures, causing not enough sand to come back and forth from the dynamic primary dune line communities. The primary dunes are gone, basically, in a lot of cases. Number two, channelization of our major waterways, pushing this sand out to sea, pushing it out in a big fan, and causing that sand to not be available for northern beaches, okay? They say this is as bad, if not worse, than the first problem of coastal development. I've heard that in several arguments. So there is a tremendous field booming in the United States right now. It's called coastal engineering. And for anybody out there that's interested in finding a really neat job in science in the future, that would be a really, really good job to go into. And I'm talking about immediate future. Because all over America, we have the sea levels rising. We've got this erosion problem happening due to too much coastal development on the primary dune line, and we've got channelization erosion happening. We've got a three-pronged pitchfork coming at our beaches, and they're all aimed at our beaches, and eventually we're going to lose our beaches no matter how hard we work unless we come up with some very ingenious ways of dealing with beach erosion. So we're going to have to come up with ingenious people to develop new ways and new technologies of being able to deal with coastal erosion. So anybody out there within the sound of my voice, if you're interested in any kind of cool science topic, check out coastal management, okay? Coastal engineering management of the sand flows along the beach. It's really a hot topic in science. It's one that'll shape the future of our coastlines. There are a lot of really cool shorebirds flying around today. And in the fall, during a lot of your fall migration routes, you have some really neat birds that you don't see throughout the year. This particular bird right here is one technically you do see along the coast a lot. It is very common. It's called the osprey, and there are two of them flying out there kind of side by side. Osprey is known as the fish hawk, or some people call them fish eagles, as a common word for them. Ospreys will hover in flight, and when they see a bird, they'll draw their wings back and they'll dive like a lot of offshore birds will do, and they'll spear their prey with these big killing talons on the back of their feet. Amazing birds. It doesn't look like he's seen any kind of fish yet, but if he does, you'll see him hover like there and watch him dive. Watch him. Oh no, he did a false dive. He did a false dive. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes you can see them when they pull their wings back like a bullet and then boom, hit that water. The other birds out there hitting the water really hard are brown pelicans. They're kind of off in the same area. Very difficult to see him. Now we're going to try and see if we can get a little closer up shot of him. That bird lives just south of here in the inlet. He lives back in a tree back here on this island. Really a nice, majestic bird, about a 5-foot wingspan. I mean, really nice, pretty bird. Osprey. Boom! Look at him diving today. Must be a lot of fish out there. For those of y'all that are interested in beach combing or any kind of really cool topic about the beach, this is an excellent nature guide to the Carolina coast. It's a really, really good one. Peter, M-E-Y-E-R, Peter Mayer is the author. It's a really good little simple coastal guide that shows you a lot of your basic seashells you're going to find up and down the beach, how your coastal communities are formed, a lot of different topics we covered in this show or in this book. Even a little bit about hurricanes is in here too. So if you're interested in reading more for yourself, please check out a copy of this book from your local library, or go online and study more and order you a copy off one of the publishing companies out there. It's really a neat book. I use it all the time out there in the beach. It's just super simple. You can throw it in your little coat pocket and go out on the beach and just learn all about nature. It's a wonderful way to get your kids involved and your whole family involved in conservation issues as well. Thank you for watching Forever Wild. We've seen hurricanes. We've seen tropical storms. We've seen beach erosion. We really appreciate you watching this wonderful episode of Forever Wild. I hope you come out to Swamp Fest 2005 at Playcard Environmental Education Center. That will be held on Saturday, November the 5th from 10 to 3. That's a free event. I'd like to kind of plug that here toward the end. For Forever Wild, my name is Ben Abercrombie. You can come out and see me anytime at Playcard Environmental Education Center. And from here to the next episode, happy nature viewing, everybody. See ya.